9-year-old girl begs dad, "Please, pretend you're dead." Then something unbelievable happened. Before I continue, my dear friends, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button, like, and share this video with your loved ones. Your support means the world to me. Thank you so much. Hello my lovely friends, I have a story for you today that's going to take you on an absolute roller coaster. Those stories that sounds like it's straight out of a movie, but it reminds you that sometimes, the people closest to us, well, let's just say, you need to keep your eyes open. Our story starts with a man named Richard. He was the definition of having it all. We're talking a sprawling mansion with glass walls overlooking the city, a fleet of cars that looked like they belonged in a showroom, and a business that he had built from the ground up into an empire. He was kind, he was smart, and he was known all over town for being generous. But if you looked closely, you'd see the sadness behind his smile. Richard's life had a huge, gaping hole in it, that all the money in the world couldn't fill. About 3 years earlier, he had lost the love of his life, his college sweetheart, Sarah. It was a sudden illness, and it just shattered his world. They had been that perfect couple, the ones who still held hands, who finished each other's sentences. And just like that, she was gone. The mansion felt empty, the fancy cars felt pointless. The only thing that kept him going, was his daughter. Lily was 9 years old, and she was a perfect blend of her mom and dad. She had Richard's thoughtful eyes but Sarah's bright, infectious smile. She was a sweet, gentle little soul. She loved to play hide and seek in the giant house. She had a collection of dolls that she treated like her own little family, and her favorite thing in the world was when her dad would come home from work. Their bond was something special. He was her hero, and she was his entire world. After Sarah died, they clung to each other. They had their own little routines. Taco Tuesdays, movie nights on Fridays with a mountain of popcorn, and every single night, he would tuck her in, read her a story, and kiss her goodnight, telling her, "You and me, kiddo. We're a team." Lily missed her mom terribly, of course. She kept a little framed photo of her by her bed. But she was a resilient little girl, and as long as she had her dad, she knew everything would be okay. Richard looked at his daughter and swore to himself that he would spend the rest of his life protecting her, making sure she was always safe, always happy. He just wished he wasn't so lonely. He wished Lily could have a mother figure again. Right there is where the trouble begins. About a year passes, and Richard, on the advice of his friends, he starts to try. He goes to a few charity galas, a few business dinners. And at one of these events, he meets her. Her name was Isabella. Now, Isabella was absolutely stunning. She was one of those women who just turned heads everywhere she went. She was tall, with long, dark, flowing hair and eyes that just sparkled. She was in her final year of university, studying art history, and she seemed so bright, so full of life. Richard was instantly captivated. He hadn't felt that spark in so long. She was charming, she laughed at his jokes, and she seemed so impressed by him, so interested in his life. For the first time since Sarah passed, Richard felt a little bit of that old magic. He felt hopeful. He introduced her to Lily, and Isabella was, at first, the picture of sweetness. She brought Lily gifts, she complimented her drawings, she talked to her in a soft, kind voice. Richard watched them, and his heart swelled. He thought, this is our second chance. A new beginning for all of us. He was so blinded by her beauty and his own desperate need for a family again that he didn't see what was happening beneath the surface. It all happened so fast. Looking back, it was too fast. Within 6 months, Richard was down on one knee. He proposed with a diamond ring so big it looked like a block of ice. Isabella cried tears of joy, said yes, and the wedding was planned in record time. It was the event of the season. Richard was on cloud 9. He truly believed he was doing the right thing for himself and for his daughter. He was giving Lily a new mom, a complete family. But here's a little secret. A dark one. Isabella was in her final year of university, yes, but she wasn't just a student. She already had someone. A guy named Mark. He was a struggling musician, kind of a rough around the edges type, and they had a passionate, fiery relationship. But Mark was broke. And Isabella had a taste for the finer things in life. When she met Richard, she saw her ticket. The mansion, the cars, the jewelry. She saw a life she had only dreamed of. So, she told Mark to just be patient. It's just for a little while, she'd text him. We'll have everything we ever wanted. She was playing a very dangerous game. And she was about to get married to a man she felt absolutely nothing for, except for the zeros in his bank account. So, Isabella moves into the mansion. She is now Mrs. Richard Vale. On the outside, everything looked perfect. She redecorated parts of the house, threw lavish dinner parties, and smiled beautifully for the high society magazines. Richard was proud to have her on his arm. Lily started to see things. When Richard was in the room, Isabella was all smiles and, sweetie, and, darling. But the second he left, her face would go cold. If Lily tried to show her a drawing, Isabella would wave her away, saying, "Not now, Lily, I'm busy," without even looking up from her brand new, diamond-encrusted phone. Lily, being the sweet kid she was, just thought she was doing something wrong. She tried harder. She'd offer to help, she'd make Isabella a little card. And Isabella would give her a tight, fake smile and pat her on the head, and the second Lily turned around, she'd toss the card in the bin. The laughter in the house started to fade. Lily found herself spending more and more time in her room, playing quietly with her dolls. She didn't have Taco Tuesdays with her dad as much anymore, because Isabella insisted on fancy, formal dinners every night. The warm, loving home Richard and Lily had built was starting to feel cold, sterile, and strange. Isabella was always on her phone. She would lock herself in her new, giant walk-in closet or go out onto the private balcony of the master suite, and she would talk for hours in a low, hushed voice. Richard just assumed she was talking to her university friends or her family. He was a trusting man. He was busy with his work, and he wanted to believe his new marriage was perfect. But Lily saw. One afternoon, Lily was looking for her dad, and she walked past the study. The door was slightly open. Isabella was in there, her back to the door, on the phone. And Lily heard her laugh, a real, genuine laugh, not the fake one she used with her dad. "Oh, Mark, you're crazy," she whispered. "No, he's at the office, he won't be back for hours." "Yes, I miss you, too. I told you, just be patient. It's going to be so, we're going to have everything. I have to figure out how to speed things up." Lily didn't understand what "speed things up" meant. She just knew the name, Mark, wasn't her dad's, and she knew the way Isabella said it made her stomach feel funny. She backed away slowly, her little heart pounding. She didn't say anything to her dad. How could she? What would she even say? The tension in the house grew. Isabella was getting more and more impatient. She was enjoying the shopping sprees, but she hated having to pretend to be a loving wife. She hated that Lily was always there, a little reminder of Richard's first, real love. She wanted it all, and she wanted it now. And she wanted Richard, and his daughter, gone. One Tuesday afternoon, Richard was in a long all-day meeting. Lily was playing in the upstairs hallway, where she was making her dolls walk along the carpet, humming a little tune. Isabella was in the master bedroom, just down the hall. She must have thought Lily was outside, or in the playroom downstairs. She was on the phone again, but this time, her voice wasn't loving or whispering. It was cold. It was hard. Lily's doll tripped and fell right near the bedroom door, which was open just a crack. As Lily bent down to pick it up, she froze. She heard Isabella's voice, sharp and clear. "Carlos, is this line secure? Good. Listen, I have a job for you, eh? Here's what you're going to do," Isabella continued. "You're going to mess with the brakes. I don't care how you do it. Make it look like an accident. A total, tragic failure. He's driving on the mountain pass, it should be easy." Lily was paralyzed. She couldn't breathe. It felt like a giant, icy hand was squeezing her chest. Her dad. The mountain pass. Spoil the brakes. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood one thing: accident. She heard the person on the other end, Carlos, the mechanic, the man who had always given her a lollipop when she and her dad visited the garage, mumbling something. He must have asked, "Why?" or, "What's in it for me?" Because Isabella's voice turned sickly sweet. "Let's just say, the estate is worth billions, Carlos. An accident like this, the grieving widow. I'd be in control of everything. And for your silence and your service, I am prepared to offer you a cut. A $900 million cut. $900 million. You will never have to work again. You can disappear. Just do this one thing for me. $900 million. The number was so big it didn't even sound real. Lily felt a sob rising in her throat. She clamped her hand over her mouth, her whole body shaking. Isabella listened for a moment and then smiled. Lily could hear the smile in her voice. "Good. I knew you were a smart man. Friday morning. Don't fail me." The call clicked off. Lily heard the rustle of fabric as Isabella moved around the room. Scrambling on her hands and knees, silent as a mouse, Lily crawled back down the hall and darted into her own bedroom, diving under the covers. She lay there, trembling, tears streaming silently onto her pillow, her doll clutched to her chest. Lily stayed hidden in her room for hours. She was terrified. What if Isabella heard her? What if she knew? Every footstep in the hallway made her jump. Finally, she heard the one sound she'd been waiting for, the heavy front door opening and her dad's cheerful voice calling out, "Lily Bean. I'm home." Usually, she would run and jump into his arms. But today, she couldn't move. She just started to cry, quiet, terrified sobs. Richard's footsteps came up the stairs. "Lily. In your room, honey." He pushed the door open, his smile fading when he saw the lump under her covers. "Sweetie, what's wrong? Are you sick?" He sat on the bed, and Lily finally shot up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes wide with panic. She threw her arms around his neck, clinging to him so tightly he could barely breathe. "What is it? What happened?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Lily was crying so hard she could barely speak. "She's going to hurt you," she wailed. "Who? Going to hurt me?" "Isabella," Richard asked, confused. She was on the phone. Lily gasped out, the words tumbling over each other. With Carlos, the mechanic. She wants him to spoil your brakes. On the black car. Before Friday. She said, you'd have an accident on the mountain. She promised him $900 million. Richard's face went from confusion, to shock, to a terrifying, cold stillness. He looked at his daughter's terrified, earnest face. He knew Lily. She didn't lie. She didn't make up stories like this. He held her shoulders. Lily, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard. Every single word. Lily repeated it, word for word. The call. The brakes. The money. The mountain pass. And then, she looked him right in the eyes, her little face crumpled in fear, and said the words that would change everything. Daddy, what if on Friday, you don't go? What if, please, Daddy, please, pretend you're dead. A storm of emotions passed over Richard's face. Disbelief. Rage. A crushing, heartbreaking betrayal. He had opened his heart, his home, to this woman, and she was trying to murder him. For money. And she was going to make it look like an accident, leaving his daughter an orphan. But his most powerful feeling. It was a cold, protective fury. He looked at his daughter, who had just saved his life, and he knew exactly what he had to do. He wasn't just a rich man, he was a smart one. He pulled Lily into a hug. You are the bravest girl in the entire world, he whispered, his voice shaking just a little. You did the right thing. And Daddy is going to be okay. We're going to be okay. But we have to be very smart. You and me. Our team, remember. He told her, we have to pretend everything is normal. Can you do that for me? Can you be a super spy? Lily, wiping her tears, nodded bravely. That night, after Isabella was asleep, Richard made a call. Not to the police, not yet. He needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. He called his head of security, a man he trusted with his life, and had him come to the mansion in the middle of the night. They worked for hours, installing tiny, state-of-the-art hidden cameras all over the main living areas, the study, the kitchen, and especially in the master suite and living room where Isabella made her calls. They were voice-activated, high definition, and completely invisible. By 4 a.m., the house was a fortress of secrets. Richard went back to bed, lying next to the woman who wanted him dead, and didn't sleep a wink. The next 2 days were the most tense of Richard's life. He had to act completely normal. He kissed Isabella goodbye in the morning. He talked about the big investor summit on Friday. Lily played her part, too, being quiet and polite, just as she always was. Isabella was in a disturbingly good mood, humming to herself, already planning her new, widowed, life. Then, Friday morning came. Isabella was practically vibrating with excitement, though she tried to hide it. She straightened Richard's tie, her eyes sparkling. Have a wonderful meeting, darling, she cooed, kissing his cheek. Drive safe. That mountain pass can be so tricky. I will, Richard said, looking her dead in the eye. Don't you worry. He gave Lily a long, tight hug at the door. Be a good girl for Isabella, he said, and gave her a tiny, secret wink. Lily nodded, her heart hammering. Bye, Daddy. I love you. Richard got into his other car, a silver SUV. The black sedan, the one Carlos the mechanic had worked on, was still in the garage. He had told Isabella he was taking it, but he switched at the last minute. He drove down the long driveway, his eyes watching her in the rearview mirror as she waved from the porch, a sickeningly sweet smile on her face. He didn't drive to the mountain pass. He drove straight to a hotel room he'd booked under a fake name, where his best friend, David, was already waiting. The moment Richard's car was out of sight, Isabella's entire demeanor changed. The sweet, wifely mask melted away. She ran back inside, almost skipping. She went straight to the living room, right in front of one of the brand new hidden cameras. She pulled out her phone and made a video call. "Mark. Baby," she squealed. Mark's face appeared on the screen. "Is it done? Did he leave?" "He left," she cheered. "In the black sedan, right on schedule. He should be on the mountain pass any minute now." She practically danced over to the wine fridge and pulled out one of Richard's most expensive bottles, a $5,000 bottle of champagne he'd been saving. Pop! The cork flew. Isabella poured a huge glass. "To us, Mark," she toasted to the phone. "To our new life. To $900 million for Carlos and billions for us. We're rich. We're finally rich." She and Mark laughed and blew kisses to each other, planning their trip to a private island, what yacht they would buy. She was so giddy, so excited, celebrating the death of her husband. And in his hotel room, Richard and David watched every single second of it on a live feed, their faces grim. The camera was capturing it all. While Isabella was celebrating, Richard and David were finalizing their plan. David was Richard's oldest friend, his best man, and the godfather to Lily. He was heartbroken and furious for his friend. "The police are on standby," David said, his voice low. "But your plan?" "Rich, it's brilliant, but it's cold." "She deserves cold," Richard replied, his voice like ice. "She was going to kill me, David. And what about Lily? What do you think would have happened to my daughter once I was gone? No, we have to see this through. We have to see how far she'll go." David had already arranged for a tow truck driver he trusted. They took the real black sedan, the one with the sabotaged brakes, and towed it to a deep, wooded ravine at the bottom of the mountain pass. They used a crane to lower it, smashing it against the rocks to make it look like a horrific, high-speed crash. It was a gruesome, realistic scene. Then, David made an anonymous call to 911. "I just saw a car go off the side of the road on the mountain pass, a black sedan. It looks, oh God, it looks bad." The trap was set. Now, they just had to wait. It took about 2 hours. Isabella drinking champagne and planning her new life with Mark on video chat. Then, the doorbell rang. Isabella, flustered, quickly ended the call. "I'll call you back. Maybe it's the news." She wiped the giddy smile off her face, took a deep breath, and composed her features into one of mild concern. She answered the door. It was David. And he had been practicing. His face was pale, his eyes were red, he'd rubbed an onion on his hands, a classic trick, and he looked utterly devastated. "Isabella," he started, his voice cracking. I don't know how to tell you this." Isabella's hand flew to her chest, her eyes widening. This was her cue. "David, what is it? What's wrong? Is it Richard? Did the meeting go okay?" David shook his head, looking down at the floor. "There was an accident. On the mountain pass. The car, the brakes, it went off the road." He looked up, his eyes full of fake tears. "Isabella, he's gone. Richard is dead. He died instantly." For a split second, the camera in the foyer caught it, a flash of pure, triumphant joy in Isabella's eyes. It was there for just a millisecond. Then, it vanished. Her face crumpled. No, she whispered. No. No, you're lying. And then came the scream. It was a blood-curdling, gut-wrenching wail of grief. No, not my Richard. No. She launched herself forward, as if her legs had given out, and crumpled to the marble floor. She started hitting the floor with her fists, sobbing hysterically. He can't be gone. He can't. I just talked to him. It was the most convincing, Oscar-worthy performance you have ever seen. David, playing his part, rushed to her side, trying to comfort her. Isabella, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Get out, she shrieked. Get out, you're lying. Neighbors, hearing the screams, started to come over. They gathered around, holding her, trying to console the poor, grieving widow. Lily watched from the top of the stairs, her little face pale, her heart pounding. She was watching a monster. And in the hotel room, Richard watched the woman he married roll around on the floor in fake agony. He just closed his eyes and shook his head. The next few weeks were a blur of black clothes and fake sadness. Isabella played the part of the grieving widow to perfection. She wore a dark veil, she cried at the drop of a hat, and she spoke to everyone in a broken, hushed whisper. She talked about how Richard was the love of her life, how her world was over. They held a memorial service. It was a closed casket, for obvious reasons. The entire city came to pay their respects. Isabella fainted twice and had to be held up by David. All the while, she was secretly texting Mark, the funeral is a drag. But everyone is buying it. The lawyers are already in touch. We're almost there, baby. Almost there. Richard and Lily, meanwhile, were hidden away. Richard had told the police his plan, and they agreed to lie low, to give Isabella enough rope. Lily was staying with David and his wife, playing in their backyard, safe and sound. Richard was in a secure location, coordinating with the police, and watching his own memorial service on a muted video feed, a sick feeling in his stomach. He was a ghost in his own life. For a split second, the camera in the foyer caught it, a flash of pure, triumphant joy in Isabella's eyes. It was there for just a millisecond. The burial happened. The papers were full of the tragic news. Billionaire Richard Vail dies in horrific accident. Isabella moved back into the mansion, now, her mansion. And after about 4 days, her grief magically started to lift. She was still wearing black, but she was humming again. And then, she realized her final problem. Lily. Richard's will was clear. He loved his daughter more than anything. A huge portion of his wealth, the house, the assets, it was all in a trust for Lily, to be managed by an executor David, in fact until she was 25. Isabella got a generous spousal allowance, but she didn't get control. She didn't get it all. Unless, of course, Lily was no longer in the picture. The hidden cameras, which were still active, caught the most chilling call of all. She was in the kitchen. She was on a dark web browser on her laptop, looking up untraceable poisons. She then made another video call to Mark. "It's not over," she hissed, her face ugly with rage. "The brat. The little brat gets almost everything. It's all in a trust. But I'm the one living with her. I'm her loving stepmother now." She held up a small bottle of vitamins she had ordered. "One of these in her orange juice every morning, and in a few weeks, her little heart will just stop. Doctors will say it was a congenital defect. A heart broken from losing her daddy. It's perfect. And then, it's all ours. That was the last piece of proof Richard and the police needed. An attempt on his life was one thing. A plot to murder his 9-year-old daughter. All bets were off. The next morning, Isabella, dressed in a silk robe, went to the kitchen. She crushed one of the vitamin pills into a fine powder and stirred it into a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice. She heard Lily's footsteps on the stairs. David had just dropped her off, per the plan, pretending he had to go to the lawyer's office. "Good morning, sweetie," Isabella said, her voice dripping with fake kindness. "I made you some juice." She placed the glass on the table. Lily looked at the juice, her heart hammering. She looked at Isabella. "I'm not thirsty." "Oh, don't be silly, darling," Isabella said, her voice getting a little harder. "You need your vitamins. Drink up." "No," Lily said, her voice small but firm. Isabella's patience snapped. "Drink it," she snarled, grabbing the glass. And just as she was about to force it towards Lily's face, a voice came from the doorway. A voice that shouldn't exist. "I don't think she's thirsty, Isabella." Isabella froze. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, orange juice and poison splashing everywhere. She turned around, slowly. And her face went white. Sheet white. It was Richard, standing in the kitchen doorway, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. Isabella's eyes went wide with terror. She started to shake, pointing a trembling finger. "Ghost!" she screamed. You're a ghost. You're dead." Richard just laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a cold, bitter sound. "A ghost? No, Isabella. Just a very, very disappointed husband." "But the crash. The car. They said you were dead." She stammered, backing away. "Oh, the crash," Richard said, walking into the kitchen. "The one you arranged with Carlos. The one you paid him $900 million for. Oh, by the way, he's already in custody. He sang like a canary once he knew you'd been caught." Isabella's face crumpled. I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't," Richard said, pulling a small tablet from his pocket. "That's funny. Because I think you do." He turned the tablet around and pressed play. And the room filled with Isabella's voice. Her call with Carlos, planning the accident. Her giddy, champagne-fueled video call with Mark, celebrating Richard's death. And worst of all, her call from just the day before, plotting to poison a 9-year-old girl for her inheritance. Isabella watched, her face draining of all color, her entire body shaking. When the video showed her mixing the powder into the juice, she let out a small, animal-like whimper. She looked at Richard, at the police, at Lily, who was now standing safely behind her father. There was no escape. "Isabella Vale," one of the officers said, stepping forward, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder." As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, her fake, beautiful mask finally dissolved, revealing the ugly, greedy monster underneath. She just stared at Richard, her eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred. "You," she hissed. Richard just shook his head. "Get her out of my house." He watched as the police dragged the screaming, crying, for real, this time, woman out of his life, and he finally scooped his daughter up into his arms and held her as tight as he possibly could. The aftermath was messy, of course. The case went to court, and the evidence was so overwhelming, the tapes, the mechanic's confession, the poison, that Isabella and Mark were both sentenced to life in prison. The story was all over the news, but Richard shielded Lily from all of it. He sold the mansion. It wasn't a home anymore, it was a crime scene, full of bad memories. A few weeks later, after things had settled, Richard and Lily did something very important. They drove to the cemetery, they went to Sarah's grave. They brought a big bouquet of her favorite flowers, white lilies. They sat on the grass, and Richard told Lily all about how he and her mom met. He told her how proud her mom would be, how proud he was. "You saved my life, Lily Bean," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were so brave. You're my hero." Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "You and me, Daddy," she whispered. "We're a team." "That's right," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Always." They moved to a new house, a beautiful, warm place by the beach. It wasn't as big as the mansion, but it felt more like a home. And Richard made his daughter a promise. He promised that from that day on, he would always listen to her. He would never be so blinded by what he wanted that he couldn't see what was right in front of him. And he promised he would spend the rest of his life making her happy and, above all, keeping her safe. And, you guys, the advice from this story. It's pretty clear. First, all that glitters is not gold. Someone can be the most beautiful person in the room, but their heart can be the ugliest. And second, listen to your kids. They see things we adults are often too busy, or too blind, to notice. Trust their intuition. It might just save your life. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring African tales. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue sharing stories that touch hearts and change lives. Until next time, remember, love, faith, and courage are the greatest treasures you can ever have. God bless you all. Bye.